Morning, everybody. Thanks for attending. As we continue our partnership with Workforce Development, I am Tim Fox with Charles City Area Development Corporation, and we have done several labor sheds in the past. We've been very impressed and happy with the service provided by Iowa Workforce Development. Today we have Craig Trotter and Katie Lippold to present the 2018 Laborshed Charles City findings. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Laborshed. Sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? Or what is it? Well, we'll just get right into it here. So let's think of what a laborshed is. All right. Think of a watershed, and it's a basin, and all the water is coming down, funneling into a single point, kind of coming in, and you're getting that watershed area. The laborshed is basically the same thing. It shows the location of your labor source, and it's all funneling down into Charles City. So it's coming into Charles City. So the Laborshed in 1998, the Laborshed was developed by the Institute of Decision Making at the University of Northern Iowa. It was designed to help economic developers understand the characteristics of their labor force and what was going on. And legislation was passed in 2000 that mandated IWD would conduct the Laborshed study program. So how is it determined? Well, the first step, we do an employee survey. And we send out letters to employers throughout the county that have 5 or more employees. We have them collect or they provide us really with the zip codes for each of their employees. And that's all we're asking for is the zip codes. What this gives us then is the commuting pattern. It helps us establish the commuting pattern of the Charles City Laborshed study. And if we kind of look at the numbers here, we sent out letters to 187 employers, and they were contacted with it. 103 of them returned their information. That's a 55.1% response rate, which is very good. We normally, typically, we're looking for about 33%, and we received 55. That covered then 4,338 employees, of which 3,716 live or work in Charles City. So here's this commuting map, okay? So it stretches from Rochester, here's Waterloo, Story City's over here. If you look at your commuting concentration is 63% of people live and work in Charles City. That, if you can see these numbers, it's 2,347. Nashua is 182, Rockford is 106, and this gives you kind of that range of the people that are already working in Charles City and where they live. So 37% of the employees of Charles City are live outside the city. So we have an out commute of 15.2%. Of the residents that live in Charles City are commuting out. That equates to about 615 people, and the majority of those people are working in Mason City. But an interesting note here, it doesn't look like much, but you got, Waterloo. It's a pretty good distance there. So we've established our commuting pattern, so let's look at total available workforce. It's the total adjusted labor force for Charles City is 130,400. Remember that commuting map and how it spans. It's not restricted by political boundaries. So right now, you have a potential of 130,000 people to work in Charles City. The adjusted basically is the estimated labor force of 18 to 64, and it's documented already within the surrounding areas. And really what this does is reveals that really smaller communities can compete with bigger communities. So you've got a pretty good labor force. And to really, really show an example of that, the Bureau of Labor Statistics have a couple programs that you can estimate your labor force at, but they are restricted by political boundaries. People don't go to the county line and go, oops, I can't go any farther because I can't go work outside of whatever county I live in. So if you look at these programs, LAUS, which is the local area unemployment statistics for Floyd County, it shows you the estimated number of people that live in Floyd County is 8,800. And then the other program is QCEW, which is the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages. It tells you that 6,206 people are employed within the county. And this is regardless of, it doesn't matter where they're at. So 6,000. So if you're looking at what your potential is, and now when you're restricted by boundaries, it's a bigger number. So you have a bigger number to work with. So if we clean up, kind of the second step now of figuring out the labor shed is we kind of clean up the outliers of the commuting map, and we come up with the zones. There are 3 zones. Zone 1 then is Charles City, and that is where your most workers are at. The next zone is Zone 3, and there's a moderate level of workers that come into Charles City to work, and then these are the outlying areas. So, again, important to note that there's quite a few people in Waterloo in that one zip code area that travel into Charles City to work. So in this, we do 135 surveys into each zone. We call cell phones and landlines, and we typically like to get 50-50. In this instance, we got 55% of the cell phones, which is very good. Typically, we see about 10 in most other areas, smaller communities. Bigger communities, we can get more, but 55% was a good number for cell phones. So in this survey, here are some few kind of the characteristics that we can document, and we're giving this. We call the people, and we're looking for employment status, their occupations, their benefits, and this is both current and desired. If you're going to switch jobs, your education level. We ask about wages, what industry they work in, and then kind of job research, how they're looking for jobs. But the one most important, I think, thing to realize in our Laborshed study is we get asked the question, how likely are you to change jobs? And this kind of our Laborshed sets us apart because we can ask that question because we're surveying the community. So third step then is we go into a statistical model, and through that we use an estimated number of those. We can estimate the number of those that are likely to accept employment in Charles City. And here's a few of the characteristics that we are involved in determining that estimate. It's age, it's wages, it's your distance that people will commute, your work status, gender, male or female, and education level. And it's based on previous observations, so it's not just your area. Is it three years worth of data in that model? So we have 3 years that kind of spits out a the likely to change number. So, the total likely to commute into Charles City, based on that 130,000 potential, 20,826 people would be willing to commute into Charles City for a job. And this is, we get this estimate, it's the model from the Institute of Decision Making from you and I. So that's how we get that statistical model. This is we have and I should have, see if we could get it, it's a map online. It's the commuting, or the likely to change, where the people live and will come into Charles City. And if you go online, here's a website or a link. And if you click on those, it's interactive. If you click on them, you can see the distance to Charles City. You can see the likeliness to change by employment status, so employed, unemployed. If you're a homemaker, you can see that number. The population, it gives you a lot of little different information. It's interactive, so if you want to see a community, you can click on it and it'll tell you so. So we've done all the steps, we've put it through our model, so let's start kind of digging into the numbers of what we found. So we'll start with employed. So the employed for the Laborshed area, 53 are male, 40% or 47% are female. That's a pretty good even ratio. The age, the average age is 44, and they speak 7.3% speak one language, more than one language in the household, and 64% speak Spanish. And I believe, if I remember, German is in there, came in about 35% as a language that speaks. So if we look at in here, 73% employment rate, there's 9.1 is unemployed, 8.9 is homemakers, and 8.4 are retired. It's important to note that 9.1, your actual BLS unemployment rate is 2.2. When I checked Friday, it's 2.2. You've got to understand that the BLS has more stringent points that they ask for the unemployment, like are you willing to work, are you available to work, so they have more. So that's why our surveys just strictly ask the person, are you unemployed or employed? And it's a self-answered question. So that's why it's 9.1. Just to clarify that, because I'm sure if you know your unemployment rate. So of this, of employed, 72% had full-time job, 12.8 were self-employed, then we had 11.7 are part-time, and then seasonal and temporary came in about 2.7. Now if we look at the whole of the employed, 22% said they would change. 56.8% of the unemployed said they are likely to change. 41 for the homemakers and 18.2 for retired. And that's kind of in unemployed is usually in other studies we've done is a little higher, and homemakers is a lower. So it traded off there a little bit. So you've got a lot of homemakers that would be willing to go back to work in this. So if we look at their education level, 74% have some education beyond high school. So 17.9% have an associate, 23% have undergrad, and then 8.8 have a postgraduate degree. Now this degree certification not obtained, 18.9% of the people did something. They took a class, they started a degree and didn't finish. So that what falls into that category. They've done some sort of training toward a degree or certification. So, where are the employed working? Your top industries are manufacturing, 18.5, wholesale and retail trade is 16%, healthcare is 15%, and finance is 9.1%. And this bubbled up here, normally, typically, a lot of times it's more on the education side. I think education was the 5th one, but these are your top 4. And then the top occupations then are production at 27.8, professional is 26.6, service 12.5, and clerical is 11.3. And typically the jobs in production are your forklift drivers, your manufacturing, construction workers, those type. Professional degrees is your accountants, lawyers, and as such that. And then service is typically your retail, your cashiers, food service area. So wages of the employed. The median wage for the Laborshed is $16 an hour, and 56.3% said they earned the hourly wage. Now, we didn't figure anything. That is strictly, they said they earned an hourly wage. We didn't take any, try and do any calculations to come up with the average wage. This is the median wage, strictly by when people said they earned the hourly wage. So if you look at kind of the industry, professional service is your highest at $22. You've got construction at 19. This is usually your food service down in that area. They're typically lower like that. On the salary side, $58,000 per year, and 30.2% earning a salary. And again, as you'll notice, the 56 and the 32 don't add up to 100. There are others that we're not reporting here that either earn a commission or piecemeal, or they indicated some other type of wage. And if we look at these in here, finance is your highest at 92.5, and it comes in with manufacturing at 78,000. So if we look at it by category, kind of we typically don't get much for agriculture. Farmers don't divulge what they make, so we usually don't get a whole lot of information there. But clerical's at 15 and 45,000, managerial 16 and 71, and typically most everybody makes probably more so. Your managers in production kind of fall in some of these others on their job titles and stuff. So, but by gender, males are making $17.90 per hour, or 70,000, and females are at $15 an hour, or 48,000. And the whole gender gap, typically what we see, obviously there are some disparities as you dig down deeper, but typically women in at the high level are in your lower industry jobs, the retail, service, hairdressers. They typically have that. That's kind of one of the reasons that is lower there. So the top benefits then is health and medical at 96.4, pension, retirement's at 66.3, dental 58.7, vision is 36.2, and paid vacation is 28.1. And we do break it down, so this isn't all lump sum. We have 12% reported they have paid time off. They're different. Everybody classifies vacations different. I shouldn't say everybody, but there are possibilities of how they classify vacations. So 12% is paid time off, 8.7 are paid holidays, and another 8.7 have sick leave. So. And we also, a lot of times, these are always kind of the top 4 or 5, but vision and paid vacation will flop around sometimes. So the employed likely to change, as we looked at earlier, 22% of people are very likely or somewhat likely to change their job and work in Charles City. And that amounts to 18,000, that 20,800 number that we saw previous, 18,143 people would come to Charles City for a position. And their top reasons for changing, that they would employer layoff, working conditions, they had a temporary seasonal job and now would go full-time, or vice versa, better hours, disability, they've moved, or they're fired. So if we look at those that are likely to change, we have a fairly even split here. 50.8 are male and 49.2 are female, and the average age is 40. So in that total group of 18,000, 10.7% are in that 18 to 24 bracket. 29.2% are between the ages of 25 and 34, 26.2 is 35 to 44, 18.5, 45 to 54, and then 55 to 64. So it's broken out by age group. And we kind of go down further then. As you look in the age group, the 18 to 24, you have the biggest people that want to change. 32% in that 25 to 34. And this is pretty typical, as you get older and you're in a job longer, you typically don't change near as much. So this is typical. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So if we go down and break it into the categories then of where the people are working, production is the top at 29.5% of the people in production will change. Professional is 24.6. Clerical is 19.7, and then you round out with sales, service, agriculture, and managerial. But production is your top people that will change jobs. They go one too far. Go back. There. Now, if you look within the categories who will change, your clerical is your highest level. That 42.8% of the people in clerical positions would change their jobs. Production and then, or sales and then production. So here's your biggest people that will want to find a new position. So 75.4% of those that are employed and likely to change are hourly wage earners. And if we look at all employed, $16 an hour and $58,000 as a wage. The state, if you want to look at that on a state level, the state is $17 an hour and $64 as a wage. And then those likely to change are only making $13.75 or $46,000, and those that are unlikely to change are $16.77 and $61,000. So, you know, those likely to change are $3.02 lower than those that are unlikely, and it's $15,000 per year less. So you could typically kind of make the conclusion that one of the reasons people are wanting to change job is on the wage level, because there's a pretty good disparity there. So the top benefits that those that want to change, if they got a new job, here's their top benefits they want. Again, health and medical's 91, dental's 54, pension moves down to 49.2, and then again, as you see, these flip-flop. Paid vacation comes on top, and vision. And then again, 11.9% wanted sick leave, 3.4 wanted holidays, and then another 3.4 wanted paid time off. So the current commute that people likely are willing to change are commuting 10 miles, and that's one way to work, or about 14 minutes. But they're willing to commute on average one way about 23 miles or 31 minutes. So they're willing to commute for a better job. So 30.8 are actively seeking employment, and the top jobs then that they go and search, or the top research where they're researching for jobs, is the internet at 90.4, newspapers is 26.8, and then the Iowa Work Centers are 21.4. Indeed.com has been one of the highest websites for probably the last 3 to 4 years. Has always been one of the top sites. But as you break down and as you dig deeper into different categories or different jobs, that can change. Monsters in there and some of the others. But then you have Charles City Press and the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, their top newspapers. So 56.8% of those surveyed and are currently unemployed are likely to change. Now, if you remember back, and that estimates at 1,056 people and that's through all the survey zones, would come to Charles City for a new position. Now, you remember the 9.1 unemployment rate? See this 56.8, if you multiply that now your unemployment rate gets down to about 5.2, I think it is, in the math. So see, we're bringing that unemployment rate closer to the BLS number. Excuse me. So the unemployed, if we look at gender, it's 2/3 are female and 1/3. are male. A little lopsided there, I guess. I don't see, we've seen that some, but typically it does stay a little more even. And then the average age is 38. 50.7% have been unemployed for a year or less, and then 42.9 more than a year. So if we looked at that, 71% of those were full-time positions, 19 were part-time, and then 4.8 were self-employed or they had temporary jobs. So their top reasons for being unemployed is employer layoff, disability. They were fired. They're either continuing or they're going to go back to school. They have health reasons. They were in temporary or seasonal jobs, or there's some sort of transportation issues. And disability issues, when unemployment is low, that bubbles up. That is one of the top ones because there's more obstacles for them to get back into the workplace. So that's not uncommon. So if we look at the education for the unemployed that are likely to change, 52.4% have some education beyond high school. So again, if we look at this, again, as you see, they've started something but haven't finished is higher now at 28.5, and then your undergraduate is 9.5, and your post is, again, about 9.5. So, pretty typical on that. So those that are willing to change and are unemployed right now, or their past job, they made $12.13. To get them to change or get back into the employment game, to attract between 66% and 75% of the applicants, you need to be in a range of $11.76 or $13.50 per hour. So if you think about everybody lined up, 99 people lined up, their lowest that they would be willing to accept is $10 an hour. So if you line people up in a line right at 50, half of them would take 10 or less, and you got the other half that takes 10 or more. So that's kind of 10 is your, and that's pretty typical. 10, we've seen 10, that's pretty typical. The state average, I believe, is 11. So it ticks up just a little bit. So the unemployed, they would be willing to commute 19 miles one way or about 26 minutes. .1% are actively seeking employment, and the top research they're using, internet is at the top, it's at 2/3, the newspapers are 47.6, and Iowa Works is at 14.3, which is kind of, you look back and can remember the employed, they were using Iowa Works much more, which is kind of, odd that your unemployed is using the Iowa Works force at a less percentage rate. Just an observation. And then Indeed and Iowa Jobs are the top sites. Now again, if you go back to 57.1 are actively seeking, if you think about now, we had 9.1 and we multiplied by 56.8, that got you 5.2. If you now take it by 57, it's 2.9. So now you're down close to the BLS number in your unemployment. So we've gotten through that. Let's look at some trends for Charles City. Industries of the employed, and we have some trends between 2005 and 2018. So again, your top 4 industries are manufacturing, wholesale, healthcare, and then construction comes in here. Something to keep in mind with the, as we go through these trends is as we're surveying people, you know, we may hit more heavily like construction. So it's not a, you know, it kind of depends on the people of being surveyed as to where these trends go. So just kind of keep that in mind. So again, in 2007, you know, manufacturing goes clear up to 22%. Now 2009, you're in the recessions. So manufacturing comes down and healthcare moves up, along with education. And I think those pretty much stay in there as we go. 14. And then 2018. So manufacturing, wholesale, and retail and healthcare kind of stay in those top 3 throughout those years. So if we look at the median wages and salaries over that time, the all employed is the kind of yellow line here. If you look at that, it's $12. Back in 2005, you're now up to $16 an hour. For the wages, you were at $40,000, and now it's up to $50. If you look, you know, the median wage increased by $4 an hour, and the annual salary went up by $18,000. I did a quick, before we came up, looked at the inflation, kind of did the salaries over inflation. And at $12 an hour back in 2005, if you go to today, it's like $15.50. So as you can see, you're outpacing inflation with your hourly wage, and then the same here, it's like $51.5. So your salaries here are really outpacing inflation. So if you look at job searches over this, we have newspaper in here. You know, you'll watch, you'll see as we move through the years here, it kind of keeps getting less and less. And then in 2018, but the internet grew by 21%, and newspapers unfortunately declined by 42% in usage of finding work. So further analysis that we do in your folder, we have some of these reports. We have industry and occupational reports. And kind of the first page is a map that's showing you where the residents live within the industry. It'll show you where they're at. And then the second page, we can estimate available labor, employment status, education level, and again, kind of what they're using for job researches. In this report, the wage page is probably the most, I shouldn't say the most important, but is unique in the sense that these are employer wages that are being paid. We have a group back at IWD that's their job. They survey employers to see what they're paying, and then they customize these tables, these by occupation. So these are actual wages being paid within your area. And we can typically We can do any kind of industry or occupation that you want. We just have advanced manufacturing in there. We have quick stat reports. They're kind of one-pagers. We have job resources, and it goes through what they are. But we can put together wages, by employment status, industry, education level, whatever kind of, if you have some information you want, we can put together kind of a quick one-page report that gives you, that you can hand out. We also in there have a NCRC, the National Career Readiness Certificate, and at the time, 10,188 people hold NCRC certificate in Charles City Laborshed area, and 26.4 of them are gold or platinum. That's not a bad number. We also have a website on IWD. It's iowalmi.gov. We have kind of an interactive map or table that you can go and research data. You can customize it. You can get unemployment, employment rates, industry data, wage information, industry projections, occupation projections. We have a lot of stuff, and this is kind of typical of kind of what it looks like, but you can go and research and get a lot of data off the website. Go around and look into that. And we have a new program. Obviously, we're starting a new Laborshed program. I don't know if you've heard any of that. IWD and IEDA are partnering, and we're going to finance the Laborshed studies for free, and you'll get them every other year. So we're going to, the darker blue here is where we're going to start. And so we'll do half the state 1 year and the other half. And we will provide these for free. So these will come on a more consistent basis for everyone. And that's all I have. Is there any questions? Yes.
Does Charles City have geographically a very large labor shed, a medium labor shed, a small labor shed? Is there any way to judge that?
We could compare them to others. I would say, 130,000 is pretty good. Is a pretty good size.
For a community the size of Charles City, it's probably fairly typical. You are on some convenient located as far as like traveling to Waterloo. Your highway system isn't too complicated to get to, so it does stretch a little bit further south than maybe some other areas might stretch. But a 60-mile radius is kind of typical for a community the size of Charles City.
All right, thank you.
Any other? Yeah.
Do you have comparison slides for, say, Waterloo and Mason City and so on, so that you can just lay them out? Or?
If there are any, we don't have those prepared. If there are any data points that you would like to see how you compare to, we haven't done one in Waterloo for quite a long time. They have not contracted for us to do that. With the new program, they will be getting one this year. So that would be an opportunity to compare to your closest metro area if you wanted to see anything. Craig has his card in here, and we also have our contact information. So any data points that you'd like to see, how do we compare one-on-one with any surrounding community, we'd be happy to provide those for you.
In the back.
I have two.
Okay.
Okay, first off, I used to be one that lived here, worked for companies elsewhere. Is that in the data? So in other words, you currently live in a location, whether it's Charles City or Floyd County in general, but your business is somewhere else. Is that all taken in consideration? And also that if you I think there's a lot of trend changes for people that they can live anywhere.
Yes.
So I was just wondering how that data was captured.
It is in there.
Yes, all of the statistics that he went over, the percentages of this and that, are collected through a telephone survey. So in that survey, we surveyed at 405 people, and we do ask them where they work, who their employer is, and where they work. So we do capture that out-commute data. Based on that survey, 15% of Charles City residents leave for work. We also do ask them if they telecommute and how often they're allowed to telecommute. We didn't report this here, but that's something I could look up if you were interested to know what the percentage is there.
I think it's just important, that where you work sometimes can be almost anywhere.
Yes.
And where you live can almost be anywhere.
Yes.
So, the second part of my question, and you might have covered it, and I apologize if I didn't capture it. When you were talking about people that were interested in changing employment, is that not taken in consideration? I work at a company and I just want to change a different level within the same company? Or is these people that want or would change literally outside of business to another business or to something else?
They're aggregated. It's a combination.
Yeah.
So are you likely to change your position? So it could be a different position within your employer, or
Right.
leave that employer and go
Right.
somewhere else. So
Okay.
that percentage captures both of those groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This is how you relate to other areas. There's the matter of the skills gap, which is a training issue. Are some of your material related or part of analyzing what kind of changes are going to be needed in skills training to continue to match our needs in the Charles City area?
Well, we do capture in the Laborshed, we ask what kind of education and training they have. And we do have another program called the Workforce Needs Assessment, where we ask them we're surveying employers. And we ask them, when you get applicants, then what kind of lack of skills are you seeing? I don't know if you've heard of the initiative Future Ready Iowa, but it is trying to address the need for all of those open positions that don't require a 4-year degree or something like that, but something beyond high school. So we have added questions to our Laborshed survey in the past year, asking, do you have a trade certification, and what is that? And we are beginning to use that information at very early stages to try and match employers with at least knowledge of the amount of workers in your area that do have these trade certifications or are beginning to pursue those trade certifications. In addition, registered apprenticeships as well has been included in that.
So that's going to come online.
It's coming down the pike. We don't have any solid data that I can give you because we just started this in the past year, but it is definitely something that's be taken into consideration because it's well known that people are accepting that there's those middle skills, or what people call middle skills, that aren't being utilized in the workforce as much as they should be.
So that's something that we should be.
Looking forward to. Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
37% of Charles City employees live outside of Charles City seems high. I wouldn't be an expert on the issue, but how is that comparable to other towns this size in the state?
That's fairly typical. There are often around 75% that would live and work in that node community. But this is data that all Charles City employers provided that we've documented. These are the residential zip codes of their employees. And we got in the information for about 4,000 employees, and 37% of them are not living in Charles City, they're commuting in.
Do you have a margin of error on this or not?
Not
As
for
far
that.
as people lying or just giving you answers just to get you off the phone?
Well, that's not on the telephone. Those are the letters we send to the employer.
Oh, okay.
And we just say, can you send us your residential zip codes for your employees?
I understand.
So there can be error there, and sometimes we'll get somebody who just wrote Charles City for their zip code and 120 employees.
Sure.
And we know not all of them live in Charles City, so we will follow up and we do try to clean up that data. There could be some error, though, you're correct.
Do you have any way to answer the why on that?
The why.
The number, he's quoting 38.6.
Mhm.
Is there any report that answers the why they live where they live and work where they work?
No, other than you can extrapolate from some of the information as far as perhaps the community they live in does not provide wages or jobs that pay wages that they need, so they travel into Charles City to get those wages. There's no why do you work in Charles City question, no.
One of your cells here that, like on page 4, I think it is, it talks about employed likely to change employment. And none of those top 8 list wages or benefits. So was it wages and benefits not asked as part of that question? Or is that, because I mean, you hear that could be like 3rd or 4th in tier as far as level of importance, but what employer layoff, working conditions, things like that. Was that, aside from wages and benefits, why are you likely to change?
No.
Or
The way that question is phrased, and actually going forward with our new rollout, we've changed it, but we currently do not prompt the respondent. We don't give a list and say, are these reasons? So they just are asked, why are you likely to change? If they don't say, wages is an acceptable answer. It didn't make the top list, as you saw, neither did benefits, but that's because they didn't offer that up. Going forward, they will be prompted with a variety of reasons and asked yes, no. So then wages and benefits might start to trickle up to top list. But you would think if wages were, that would be at the top of your mind, and
right.
it wouldn't be something you wouldn't think to say. But at this point, yeah, it didn't make the top 5.
there's other reasons
Yes.
that are, so, yeah. And I would be interested in that telecommuting information.
If I can get your card or your contact
Yes.
information, I can send that to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything further? Again, if something comes up, obviously here's our contact. I have my contact or my card in a folder. You can call, you can email, and if you've got a question, I'd be happy to get that answer back to you. So with that, I thank you for letting us come and go over this Laborshed.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.